Steve, let me give you some other numbers that are really important right now. 5 states have declared a state of emergency. 1.7 million people in the Carolinas and Virginia is told to evacuate. 10 million people in the path of Florence. And instead, they're fighting back and forth about what happened in Puerto Rico. It is incredibly distasteful.
Yeah, totally.
I don't know why the president weighed in on this one.
The word that came to my mind was just completely unseemly. I mean, what is this about? I think that it's one of those moments when you really respect the elected officials below the federal level, because they're the ones often that deal with the things that affect people's lives, governors and mayors and so on. They're doing the really hard work on the ground. Of course, the federal government will be there to help. I'm sure President Trump's completely right, and quite rightly putting the resources of the federal government there. But this political argument is really, as I say, unseemly. I mean, it's just, what are we doing?
Yeah, I don't know. It cheapens us as a country.
And I
mean, because we could do more for people around the world and at home than anybody else on the planet. We do. We are so heart-filled when it comes to the rescues and all of this. To have that be the conversation right now.
But I think it says something about what's going on. I mean, you know, it's a phrase that others have used, the politicization of everything these days.
Yeah.
And let's be honest, this began during what happened in Puerto Rico, because I remember very clearly at that time, I felt the same emotion about what was being done in terms of attacking President Trump. You saw the mayor of San Juan, for example. I mean, she was practically a co-host on MSNBC during that time.
Yeah. She was printing T-shirts.
Going on and on and on about, and before it was even clear exactly what had happened. And so the politicization has been going on for a long time.
Katie, I understand the president's frustration in the sense that he has worked very hard to help Puerto Rico. And when you look at the crumbling infrastructure that they had before, and also the fact that they're an island, so you can't just drive there to help, that really the effort to help them has been Herculean. But to take up on the issue of how many people are dead is so disgusting.
Well, the first thing I want to say is that the politics of hurricanes didn't start with Donald Trump. It started with George W. Bush and Hurricane Katrina, when there was a huge back and forth between what the local government didn't do, what the federal government didn't do. There's that famous photo of President Bush flying over and looking down on Air Force One, and people said he was out of touch. That's when it really started to be something that people use as a political argument. To argue over these numbers, I think that that's for another time. There can be valid questions about how these things are determined, who's more responsible, the federal government or the local government, in terms of response or preparedness. But the problem right now is that's a huge distraction from the preparedness for this current hurricane, and it doesn't allow local and federal officials to learn from the mistakes of what happened. There are always things that can be improved. Nothing ever goes 100% according to plan. That doesn't mean that people didn't try to prepare as much as possible, do as much as possible, and get the resources on the ground ahead of time. And also, I think, comparing apples to oranges. You know, Harvey, there was a death toll of 82, I believe. Puerto Rico, we're looking at a number of 3,000. What is the reason for that? There are obviously different conditions on the ground for that, and you can learn from each one depending on what we have to face going forward, because there will be another hurricane in Puerto Rico, and the local government has an opportunity here to take some responsibility and build their economy so that they can sustain something like this in the future.
Leslie, why can't we put our politics to the side right now in the face of this storm?
We should, but the president didn't, and the president hasn't. And you can never, left or right, no matter what office you're in, try and turn a disaster into political victory. I understand his numbers are down. I understand that we're months away from the midterm elections. But one of the things people are looking at, which they don't want to see, I think, in the president, are the self-accolades. One of the things I did like when we just saw the press conference is he used the words they more than I. You know, they're ready. The first responders are prepared. They're ready. Another thing I think on a local level that the communities are looking for, and to your point about Puerto Rico being an island, absolutely. I mean, right now we're seeing in North and South Carolina and Georgia an infrastructure, if you will, with the federal government and FEMA and that response program, much more prepared than Puerto Rico. But people are going to be, look, where's the distribution? Water, for example, that they found wasn't distributed properly in Puerto Rico. Food, shelter, and healthcare. They are going to look to that. But quite frankly, I really don't think that comes to their mind, most Americans, when they go to vote. I really don't. So there shouldn't be a reason why anybody should politicize this. However, funding that is essential. To take money from immigration, and Homeland Security has assured that ICE is going to pull back, and they're not going to.
That was an example of exactly what you're talking about. That was politicizing it, and it turned out not to be true.
Right.
But this is not what people are going to vote for when they go to the polls in November. And this is why I think whether you're the president, whether you're in a local office in any of those states, you don't politicize this. This is about people and preparedness and getting the supplies they need to them in a timely manner.
I think one of the complicating factors when you talk about death and loss and all of that is that it becomes about the numbers and not about the people.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And having been to Puerto Rico many times with my family and seen that beautiful place torn apart by a hurricane as we brace for another one, we know it really is about the people. And it isn't just the people who may, have lost, and our hearts and our support are with them, but it's the people who will be tasked with rebuilding, and quite frankly, an infrastructure that didn't support them even before the storm.
That's exactly right.
So it's hard.
Yes.
I understand that there's forensic that needs to be done. I mean, you were in support of the former Prime Minister in the UK, so you know that it takes some time and some stick-to-itiveness to find out exactly what happened forensically, but we know that the number is north of teens. We know we know that. So at this point, I don't understand politically why anybody would even wade into that, whether it's the president or anybody else. Let's let the science figure that out, and in the meantime, let's lead with our hearts, because we got another beast coming in this way, and we got to be able to focus in on that.
Not only,
go ahead.
I mean, 18 is, on your point, 18 is too many. 3,000
is too many if it's your family.
That's what I was thinking.
If it's your family, one is too many.
Absolutely.
So, and I mean, we will be able to talk about politics forever, but to support the families in all of these, I think this is the time to do that.
The Carolinas already starting to feel the impact of Hurricane Florence.